Hello everybody, my name is Mike Gag, and in this video we are going to look at adding some final features to our game. More specifically to this video, we're going to look at adding states. The code I'm starting with is the code we finished up our last game tutorial with. This has, well here I'll just run it for you. This has all of our sprites in place. We have our ship and our explosions and our comets and yeah, so okay. So we have all this stuff in place at this point. So everything's kind of looking pretty good as far as, you know, the actual primary gameplay mode goes. However, most games aren't only just primary gameplay modes. They have menus and, win screens, lose screens, sounds, stuff like that, that we're going to look at, that we're going to look into putting in here. So basically, like I said, I'm using the code that we finished the last game tutorial with. As I'm looking at this, I'm noticing that as we progress in this particular part of the series, where we add our finishing touches, the code's going to get a little messy. I do apologize for that. Like I said many times, we're doing a non-object oriented approach. Things do tend to get messy that way. However, when this series is finished, I'd like to come back and redo this game with an object oriented approach, so you can see kind of a better way of doing it. And so I'm going to leave a lot of the code clean up for that. So things are going to get messy, just sort of follow me along. Or I'm sorry, follow along with me. One of the first things I want to do is I have my object variables down here inside my main loop, which gives them local scope inside main. I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to grab those and I'm going to give them global scope by putting them up here. Now, I'm not a big fan of global scope, but at the same time, that's going to make things a heck of a lot easier as far as many other code changes that I would otherwise have to do. After I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and come up here and create myself a new enumeration. Like I said, I'm adding states in this video, so I'm going to add the state enumeration, and our three states are going to be title, playing, and lost. We'll call it lost. So with the way this particular game is set up, there is no win scenario. You just play until you lose. So we don't need a winning or won screen. We're just going to have the title, playing, and lost. And that'll dictate kind of how our game flows. Next, I'm going to add the prototype for a function you should be familiar with here called change state. And that's going to read in a state variable by reference and a new state variable. Awesome. Go ahead and grab this header now while I'm thinking about it. We'll come all the way to the bottom here. We'll go ahead and add it in. And I'm going to go ahead and say if state double equals title, else if state double equals playing, else if state double equals lost. Then state equals new state. Hopefully, remember, I'm doing it in this fashion so that we can have our pre-processes and our post-processes, so we can manage leaving the state, manage the state change, manage entering the state. Awesome. So far, so good. And we can come back, we can flesh this out a little bit more with stuff. But for now, I'm going to come back up to main, and I'm going to add myself some new Allegro variables. So let me come up back here. I have created a couple title screens, which I'll include in the source code here. Or not title screens, one title screen and one lost screen. And so we need the bitmaps for those. So Allegro bitmap, and I'll call it title equals null. And then I'll also have Allegro bitmap, call it lost equals null. And since I'm going to be creating them there, I'm going to come down and destroy them at the bottom. And I'll destroy bitmap title. And I'll destroy bitmap lost. Awesome. Alright, so far so good. Well, what did I do here? Oops. Underline. Or underscore. There we go. Awesome. Okay, now I'm going to come back up here to where I'm loading in my images. And I'm just going to go ahead and load in those two screens. The title equals al load bitmap, and I'm going to pass in shooter underscore title dot png, and Oh, missing some quotes here. There we go. And then we're going to do lost equals l load bitmap. And I'm going to do shooter and then lose.png. Just like that. Awesome. And that'll load everything in. Fantastic. Okay, so you're going to see right here what we do is we initialize all of our values. I would love this to be object-oriented so I could do this differently. And when you see me do an object-oriented video of this, you got to see what I mean. This is going to irk me because we're actually going to run this code twice. And I hate doing that, but we're going to do it anyway. Before we call these, we're going to run change state. And we're going to change our state to title. Alright, so that's going to get our game going. Oh, I forgot to create our state variable. Up here, under is game over, I'm going to do int state equals -1. Awesome. Okay, so we are going to call change state, and that's going to set us into the title state. Once we have our state change state function figured out, all we really have to do then is update our game update section and our game render section. So I'll get to that in a second here. So we'll come back here to change state. So I'll just go to the definition of that. And let's go ahead and flesh that out. Alright, let's give it some stuff. In this game, we don't necessarily need to do anything when leaving any particular state. Alright, there's nothing I need to do when I leave my title state. There's nothing I need to do when I leave my playing state. There's nothing I need to do when I leave my lost state. However, since we're using states, we have the ability to say if we lose the game, giving the player the chance to play again. Right now, if you lose the game, then you just exit out of the game, and that's that. Alright, so we'll give the player a chance to start the game again. What that means is when we enter the playing state, we want to initialize all of our values. Alright, so what we want to say is when we enter the playing state, we want to init the ship, passing in ship. Alright, and we want to init, oops, that's not right. Init bullet, passing in bullets and num bullets. We want to init comet, passing in comets and num comets. And finally, init explosions, passing in explosions and num explosions. Okay, so you got to be thinking to yourself here, well, init ship doesn't just take one variable, it takes two, right? Init ship, let me find it here, takes in a ship and a ship image. Init bullets takes bullets, number of bullets, no image because our bullets are just circles. Init comet takes our comets, our number of comets, and our comet image. And explosions takes our explosions, our number of explosions, and our explosions image, right? Well, why aren't we passing these in down here? The answer is because since those images are local, right? We created inside our main, so they're not global. We don't have access to them in here. Furthermore, I don't want to have to reassign those images every time we start our game over. All right? It really doesn't take up all that much processing because they're just pointers anyway, so just memory, assignment. So it's not really that big of a deal. But what's a much more elegant solution is to rewrite this init ship, init comet, and init explosions to work without it. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my, I'll start with my init ship function, and we'll go from there. Let me find my function here. So what I can do is init ship, and I can say Allegro bitmap image equals null. Okay? What I'm doing is I'm providing a default value here. So basically, if we have it as null, okay, or if we don't provide an image, then the image will equal null. If we do provide an image, then that value will be in there. And then I can simply say if image does not equal null, alright, then ship image equals image. Easy enough, right? So basically, if I provide an image, which I will do my first time calling this, an image will be placed here. Every other time I call this, I'm not going to provide an image, and so null will naturally be passed in, alright? And so this line of code won't run. It'll say, is it null? Well, it's null, okay, so we won't assign the image there. Alright, so Easy enough. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that to our other ones. Let me go to my init comment, to image equals null, and then I'll come down here and I will say if image does not equal null, just like that. And then I need to do that for my init explosions. Image equals null, and then if image does not equal null. Awesome. What we see when that happens is now we're good. We only need to pass in one variable. Alright? Now, the reason I was saying we have to duplicate the code is because this is going to run when we enter the playing state, right? So that's going to run when we enter the playing state, and then where am I at here? Right after I enter my playing state, this is going to run, reinitializing the values, which I don't like, but what are you going to do, with the proper images. No, that wasn't an image. Bullets don't have images. Okay. So that gets our change state to where we want it to be. Right now, that's all for our change state. We don't have to do anything special when going into our title screen. We don't have to do anything special when exiting our game. We don't necessarily need to free up memory or anything. That's happening after our game is done. So, so far so good. Our states are coming along nicely. Now, let's go ahead, back up to our update, and let's get our update ready to run on some states here. Our update almost kind of runs on a state anyway. It has the if not game over, okay? Which is a state, you know, it's just a two-phase state. It's either game over or it's not game over, obviously. So what we can do is we can just revise that a little bit. Oh, look at that. I still had that in my clipboard. Fantastic. So if the state is title, we don't necessarily need to do anything, all right? There's no updates that need to take place during title. So we're going to leave that be. If playing, that's where a majority of our updates are going to take place. I'm going to hold off there for a second. And then if lost, if we've lost the game, once again, no real updates need to take place. Okay, so we can go ahead and just get rid of this if game over, take the lot of this, put it inside if the state equals play. Boom, just like that. Luckily for us, there's not a whole lot of updates that happen in Lost, not a whole lot of updates that happen in our title. You're going to see, unlike the states videos, where in the current states we check to see what the key presses were to see if we needed to advance the state. We're not going to do that in this video, and I'll explain why when we get to how do we change states. So for now, it's just enough to note that we're not going to do that, and I'll explain it here in a second. Next, I want to come down to my render section. My render section needs a little bit of modification, so I'm going to go ahead and paste my, oops, I don't have those anymore, do I? I don't really want to type it back out, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste. There we go, and we can just get rid of that. Awesome, so in this case, we do have something we want to draw if it's the title state. We want to draw our title image. I'm going to do AL, draw bitmap, and the bitmap I'm going to draw is title, and it's going to be 0x, 0y, 0 flags. Awesome. So our title screen will now show up. That's pretty cool. Alright, now all this stuff that happens while our game is not over, that goes here inside of our playing state. Awesome. Okay, so our game will draw correct. So that's great. And then finally, if we've lost the game, expand this out here, we'll do AL, draw, bitmap, and I'm going to call my, what did I call it, lose or lost? I think I called it lost. Yep. Lost and 0, 0, 0. Finally, I want to be able to output on my lost screen what the final score was. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to grab this line of code, paste it here. I'm just going to tweak it a little bit so I don't have to type it all back out. So what I want it to be is instead of width divided by 2, it's going to be width minus 10. Instead of height divided by 2, it's just going to be at 20. That didn't work. At 20. And my flag is going to be Allegro align right. And I'm going to get rid of this final, or this game over, it'll say for me. So now it just says final score. Awesome. With that done, I can get rid of all that. At this point, we don't need the game over variable anymore. Game over variable is no longer necessary. And the cool thing is now it's going to give us errors when it tries to put it in a game over. Those errors will tell us the places we need to update. So that works out quite to our benefit. Now, a couple things. We need to consider how exactly our game will change state. Okay, so let's start with title. If we're at the title screen, obviously the player is going to press some key, and that's going to advance us out of our title state. The reason I'm not doing like if key sub down or key subspace equals true, right? If they hit the space bar to advance. The reason I'm not checking that is because if that's true, right? If they hit the space key, what I don't want to happen is I do not want to change our state into the playing state and immediately shoot a bullet. Okay? And effectively that is what will happen because 1/60th of a second happens very quickly. So if I hit that space bar to bring me into the game, right? Almost instantaneously it'll cycle to the next update. It'll see that key press and it'll fire a bullet. So instead, what I want to do is I want to come here to where I'm. Where am I at? Come here to where I'm checking. See, we'll have to check that here in a second. Where it says fire bullets, right? And I'm going to have just a little state scenario in here. So I'm going to say if state equals title. Then I'm going to say, so if state equals title, change state to state playing. Oops, playing. I'm going to say else if, this should look familiar, state equals playing. Then I'm going to fire my bullets. Oops. And then finally, else if state equals lost, then I'm going to say change state playing. So basically what I'm saying here is that if they hit the space bar at the lost screen, and actually have this in text on the lost screen, if they hit the space bar here, it'll take them back to play the game. So space will allow them to play a game again. So using this if statement right here, basically if we're at the title, pressing the space bar will change our state to playing. Else, if we're currently playing, we'll fire a bullet. Else, if the game's over, it'll start the game back up. The reason I don't use this, like I said, is because I don't want space to do multiple things. I want it to just be a one-shot thing. Every time they hit the space, this will fire off one time and do one of these three things. Okay, so I'm just keeping it separated like that. Awesome. So that's our manual switching of states. So let's look at what else we can do. If the ship.lives is less than or equal to 0, instead of doing is game over true, we're simply going to say change state and state lost. Awesome. Great. I can actually just look through here for the red squigglies. That'll tell me every place I need to change out our is game over. Should only be one more place with the collide comet. No, actually no, we don't need to. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking of audio. So that actually should be everything because that covers our manual and our automatic ways to change our state. So let's go ahead and run this. You get to see my beautiful title screens. We get to see this game in action. So awesome. Okay. Already, I'm sure you are all amazed at my Photoshop abilities. Super awesome space shooter. It's quite fantastic, I agree. So we're going to go ahead and hit press spacebar to play. And we're just blowing up ships, or I'm sorry, blowing up comets. And so this game looks pretty familiar. I'm going to go ahead and lose. So I'll let the ships or the comets blow me up. Awesome. So we get you lose. Okay, and then I have my awesome Photoshop skills here. Our final score is 8, and I can press the space bar to play again. So I'll do that. I'll press the space bar, and you will see that my lives have been reinitialized, my score has been reinitialized, my images all still work. So obviously our code, our post process, changing the state to the playing mode has worked rather well. So once again, if I lose, you'll see. Here we are again. At any point, hitting the escape key still works me out. Okay. Awesome. So we have the structure, the skeletal system of the state ingrained in our game now. I left a lot of sections blank. Okay, and you saw that here, like the if state equals title, if state equals lost in the update. Left these blank. I left them in blank in the change state. because we're going to start using them in future videos. We won't necessarily use all of them, but they're good to be there. It's just kind of stubs, so you can use them in the future if you need them. So that is going to conclude adding states to our game. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and add a background. And in the video after that, we're going to go ahead and add sounds. And in the video even after that, I'm going to show you guys how to deploy your games to give to other people. So stand by.